Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I'm your host, Kristine Strickland, Chancellor at Fletcher. Today, I am joined by our guest, Mr. Chett Chiasson, Executive Director of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission, otherwise known as Port Fourchon. How badly did I just mess that up?
You did that perfectly.
Oh, thank you. I love the support. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. I think we're going to have a good time.
I think you are right. Well, I heard from a little bird that you may not have seen a podcast yet, and so I get to throw the 5 and 5 at you. Right. It's going to come at you cold, but okay. I think you're going to be good. 5 questions. Basically about 5 minutes, so we're going to keep the answers sort of short and sweet, and just to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Question number 1. What did you want to be when you grew up?
What did I want to be when I grew up?
Did you always want to be Port Commission?
I never even thought of that.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to be in federal law enforcement since I was in 7th grade. Had a trip to D.C. that my mom organized because she was a teacher. And we went to the FBI building, and from that day forward, I wanted to be in federal law enforcement until many years later, after I graduated from LSU, then decided to go into public administration and changed my entire life from there.
Wow. Well, okay, so I just have to know, what caused the change? What took you off that course?
So it was really just I ended up meeting my wife, getting married, having a kid, and we moved back down home because I lived in Baton Rouge and Port Allen for 8 years between the time from moving up there for school and coming back home. So when I moved back home, it was about raising a family and having a job and working. So I went to work for some boat companies and then ended up always wanting to be in the public sector because, federal law enforcement, public administration. I have a master's degree in that. So I always wanted to be a part of the public sector, and then starting to learn more about the port and how it's a public entity and what they do there. I said maybe I would like to go to work there. So.
All right. Look, I'm going to take a little bit of a pause in our 5 and 5 just to say, so everyone, I like to do some history, get some background on my guests. And so that was one of the things that I learned about you was the law enforcement thing. But I just have to take the opportunity now to say, I heard you spent some time in jail at some point in your life. Care to elaborate?
That I did. I actually worked in 2 different jails or prisons. So one summer, between my summers in undergraduate, I actually worked in the summer of 94, 95, and 97 for the Port Commission on what we affectionately call the mosquito crew.
Okay.
So I did that, and we still hire college students in the summers to come work for us. But I worked one summer because I had that idea of wanting to be in law enforcement at some point in my life. I worked at the parish jail in Thibodaux. And that was, I talked to Sheriff Craig Weber, and he's still the sheriff now. And he said, sure, I'll hire you, and you can come to work in the jail. And I said, all right, I guess I'll do that. So I did for a summer. And then when I went to my first graduate program, I actually began working in a criminal justice master's program in Texas. Oh. And I moved to Texas for about 6 months. And wow. Both my wife and I, and then we moved back, and that's when I changed to public administration, and that whole just changed my entire trajectory of my career and my life. But I worked in a private prison in Texas while I was in my first semester of my master's program there.
Holy cow!
Interesting life. Happy it changed. And but the experiences that I had in doing that and what I thought I would have been doing with my life has really helped me and molded me to do what I do today. And honestly, as the port director, we have our own harbor police force. So the little bit of knowledge I gained from doing that kind of gave me some perspective.
Awesome. Well, I guess we are very fortunate that you changed careers. I guess we are also very fortunate that your time in jail was as a law-abiding citizen.
Yes.
And not
Thank goodness.
else.
Absolutely.
All right, question 2. Favorite movie and why?
Favorite movie. So to know me is to know I don't take myself too seriously. So Wedding Crashers is probably one of my favorite movies ever.
Great.
I have a number of them because I'm not a big favorite person, but when it comes on television, I watch it just because I think it's hilarious. It's funny, and it takes you away from real life.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I like for my entertainment.
Very good. Very good. All right. So it sounds like you've had an interesting life. What is one thing that you have gotten to do over the course of your life that you thought to yourself, wow, I can't believe I got to do that. I never thought I would have gotten to do something like that.
So because of an unfortunate event of Hurricane Ida, I met the president. And President Joe Biden actually flew into Galliano at our airport that we run at the Port Commission and had a meeting with the president in Galliano, Louisiana. And I never thought I would see Marine One land at an airport and 3 of these, American, United States government Ospreys. If you look up Osprey, those planes, they're interesting, crazy looking contraptions. And, 3 Ospreys and 2 Marine One helicopters landed at the South Lafourche Leonard Miller Jr. Airport.
That had to be surreal.
Amazing. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that.
Wow, that's a special experience.
It is.
For sure.
No matter what your politics is,
right.
When the president shows up at your house, it's an amazing event and very awe-inspiring. And, for me, it was, I cannot believe this is happening right now.
Yeah. Did you get his autograph?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
I did not. But he did give us chocolates.
Okay.
It was kind of weird.
Were they good chocolates?
They were. It was Hershey's Kisses and
okay.
M&M's in a little presidential box with his signature on it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was interesting.
I would have eaten them, though.
I did.
Good for you. Good for you. See, I knew you were my people.
Right.
I knew we were bonding.
I kept the box, but I ate the M&Ms.
Good call. All right. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you dine with?
Wow. Well, I would tell you probably just because of a personal, my dad passed away 2 years ago. It would be him.
Nice. Yeah. So. No, I feel you there.
Yeah.
There are times when I think about my dad, and he's been gone a little bit longer, and just one more day, right?
Right.
One more meal,
100%.
one more something.
100%.
Yeah. All right, favorite thing to cook?
Favorite thing to cook. It's interesting because I cook a lot. But probably the thing I cook the most, so I'll just go with that, is pastelaya. And DJ Red doesn't like it. I really don't care what he thinks because I love it.
DJ Red, if you're watching, you'll have to come on the podcast and dispute the pastelaya.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. But I cook it a lot. I always get that. My family loves for me to cook that. So, in fact, I'm cooking one later this week.
Okay. Feel free to bring leftovers.
All right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the port.
Okay.
And you have been executive director for how long now?
So I've been executive director for 15 years.
Yes.
I've been with the port for almost 20.
Holy cow. And we were talking right before we started that you are actually the second port executive director in the port's history.
That's correct.
And you are coming up on your 65th anniversary this year?
That's correct. 65 years this year.
Awesome. And so tell us about the history. Like, how did that happen?
Right. So
you're not that old.
Right. So back in 1960, Senator A.O. Rapollet created the port. And for the first 18 years, the Port Commission ran the port with maybe 1 or 2 employees that just kind of helped manage things and maintain things. But there was no port director. So in 1978, they hired my predecessor. He served for 31 years, and then I came in I started working for the port right after Katrina in September of 2005, and then I became the port director in January of 2010.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a wide audience, and some of them may not necessarily be real familiar with the port.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about just an overview of the port, and specifically, what role does the port play in our economy statewide,
Right. So
or even on the national level?
yeah. So the port is run by a 9-member board of commissions, and they're the only elected port commission in the state of Louisiana for port commission's sake. So they run in the 10th ward of Lafourche Parish, which is basically the Intracoastal Canal in La Rose, south of the Gulf of Mexico, and all points west and east on either side of the southern Lafourche Parish. So that's our jurisdiction.
Okay.
And so we manage areas in that jurisdiction. But we're mainly in charge of Port Fourchon, right at the mouth of Bayou Lafourche and Belle Pass on the Gulf of Mexico, and the South Lafourche Leonard Miller Jr. Airport in Galliano inside of our levee system. We acquired the airport from the parish in 2001. So it's really just added another dimension to the services that we could provide to the community and to the industry as a whole. But the port really has grown over the years from, muskrats and mosquitoes in Marsh to the premier offshore energy service base in the country and around the world in essence, because of the efficiencies that have been created to do that servicing. So every, product, goods, service that needs to go offshore for exploration and production of oil and natural gas comes into the port through a truck or an inland barge and changes modes of transportation to an offshore supply vessel or a helicopter to get offshore. So the port, is basically a jumping off point for all of the different things necessary to explore and produce energy in the Gulf of Mexico. So the port, we're a landlord port, right? So we own or manage all of the property in the port. It's about 1,300 developed acres and about 1,700 acre impoundment. Mm-hmm. We have about 88,000 linear feet of waterfront dedicated to energy services. That's the largest anywhere. If you combine all the other ports in the entire U.S. Gulf of Mexico, or maybe the Gulf of America, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
If you combine all the other ports and their capability to service offshore energy, they only have 25% of the surfaces and the capability that Port Fourchon and its tenant base has.
Wow.
Right. So what's been created there is the most efficient place to service offshore energy in the United States, but in essence in the world. Because of those capabilities. So we're very proud of that.
Right.
And our job is to make sure that there's always access, be it road access, water access, what have you, so that our customers who are leasing the property from us can provide the services they need for their customers, who are the oil and gas operators, the energy companies.
Okay. So 2 questions that I have after that. So landlord port that you just mentioned, is that unusual? Is that unique? Or is that pretty common? I'm not real familiar.
Right. So ports in the country, around the world, are either landlord ports or operating ports or both. Right. Okay. So either you're managing property like we do, where we manage property, we build basic infrastructure, we lease that property to our customers, who are the service companies for offshore energy companies, and then they, rent out their services to their customers, the oil and gas companies. Or you're an operating port, like let's just say Port of New Orleans is both, right? They own dock facilities, they own cranes, they're offloading container ships.
Oh, okay.
And the like. We don't do any of that. Our customers are doing all of the offloading and unloading and all of those things. We're just leasing property.
Gotcha. Right? Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Right. I did not realize that. I mean, obviously, it makes sense with the position and where you're located geographically that you would be heavily focused potentially in energy, in the energy sector. Do you have any rules or regulations or policies that says we only do energy, or has it just evolved in that way? Like, do you say 80% of our space has to go toward energy production and then the other 20% can be used by others who want, or is it really just who needs the space and who wants to enter an agreement with y'all?
It's the latter.
Okay.
So it's anyone that wants to come into the port we'll provide space for them if they want to be there. It's just been that the history of it has been offshore energy services. But in the beginning, Senator A.O. Rapley, like I talked about earlier, that created the port, had it signed into law and passed through the state legislature in 1960. One of the first docks built in the port, we still affectionately call the banana dock.
Oh.
And we call it the banana dock because he knew that the banana trade was leaving the port of New Orleans, and he wanted to build a dock to attract the banana trade to Port Fourchon. Well, we never saw one banana, but we still call it the banana dock because of the history of it, right? It was because of why it was built. It is the only dock in the port that has about 150 feet of rail still embedded in it. And if you hadn't been to Fourchon, we don't have a railroad going down there.
Right.
However, right, when the grant that he received stated that there had to be a rail component, so he built it.
That's spectacular.
So the things that you and I have to deal with on a daily basis when it comes to grants and all the strings attached and all those things are probably because of some of the things that they've done in the past, right?
Right.
So we're being punished for that.
There you go.
But honestly, it's just one of those funny stories about the history of our port and things that have taken place over the years.
That's what I call using your smarts.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
I love it. Well, so are you all full right now, or do you have space? Like if I wanted to come down and rent some space from you with my extra
We
change?
absolutely have space.
Okay.
We have about 2,500, 3,000 linear feet of waterfront available.
Oh, wow.
With the associated acreage as well as non-waterfront properties available. So we're always kind of building ahead of the game. In the past, prior to 2015 timeline, we were always behind the 8 ball. We were always trying to hurry up and build because the demand was there. Now we're on the other side, the flip side of that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because no one has to look anywhere else, right? If they call us, we're ready. They have a space. We have a space for them, and we can move things forward. Because as I mentioned earlier, where all those other ports only have about 25% of our capacity, the thought process is, well, you really don't have any competition. Oh, on the contrary, right? We have to make sure we're continuing to provide the value-added services so we can hold on to our market share. Because if not, I guarantee you all those other ports want our business.
Yeah, somebody will find a way.
Correct.
And on the airport, so is that unusual for a port to have an airport? And can I go down there and catch a flight to Orlando next weekend? Or is this really like, who's flying out of this airport?
Right. So no, unfortunately, we do
Shoot.
not have commercial airport travel.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's a goal of mine.
Okay.
That's a goal of mine. Hopefully, we can do
okay.
that at some point.
Excellent.
But so the airport is a port authority owning an airport is not typical.
Okay.
In Louisiana, we have two of us that have that. It's ourselves and the Port of South Louisiana. Now, around the country, the Port of New York, New Jersey, that whole authority is just a huge group of different, they own bridges and all the airports and all of that. Port of Seattle, Tacoma also owns SeaTac,
I did not know that.
the airport
Really?
over there as well. But it's not a typical thing, right? So there's handful of cases.
Yeah.
But it really worked for us because, we're all about multimodal activity, right? So it's all about different modes of transportation. So adding the airport to the seaport and the roadways was just kind of fit, right? And then with the advent of deepwater Gulf of Mexico, all of those helicopters that used to be, just their own little facility on the port are now all on airports because the aircraft have gotten larger. They're carrying more people. And because they're carrying more people, they have to use instrument landing system and the approaches to land. So that's why the airports are important. So now they're using airport approaches and all the systems, the technology that an airport carries so they can land their helicopters.
Well, that really sounds like thinking ahead again,
Right.
that you have that capability to be able to service the industry, right? And have that kind of underneath your jurisdiction. So kind of ahead of the curve on that as well.
Correct. And look, our airport is we have a 6,500-foot runway with a full parallel taxiway.
Wow.
All the bells and whistles of any typical general aviation airport that you would need. We have about 45 fixed-based aircraft there, mostly helicopters.
Yeah.
But we also have some fixed wing, jets and planes that people utilize for their businesses or just personally. So it's a busy airport. We have about 130,000 people that fly in and out of the airport on an annual basis. And we just saw some new economic data, and it's about $120 million annual economic impact
Wow.
to the state from our little airport.
That's amazing. Huh. And so, of course, because you're sitting here with me and we're talking Fletcher, how excited are you about the new aviation program that's coming that's going to be specifically focused on rotorcraft, on helicopter repair and technician?
Critically important.
Yeah.
With all of the aircraft that we need to bring folks offshore, it's critical that we continue to build, that base for workers, for pilots, for mechanics, for all of those things, because we just don't have enough of them.
Yeah, and I don't think people sometimes realize that those jobs are here.
Absolutely.
Right? I think sometimes people think about aviation as a career, and then you think you have to go off to a big metropolitan area. I got to go work for the New Orleans airport or the Baton Rouge airport, not realizing that we need pilots, we need technicians, we need individuals right here in our community. And oftentimes we're actually having to bring in the workforce from outside of our community to do the work that we need to. So we are really excited to be able to launch that program coming up. So let's talk a little bit about the offshore energy industry. Sort of been up and down. I know since I joined Fletcher back in 2016, I came in sort of right after the downturn, I think in 2014-ish, and we've seen some rebounds. Then we had COVID and Ida. What are you seeing in terms of trends in the energy industry right now from your vantage point at the port?
What we've noticed is there's more of a balanced approach to energy as a whole. And I think there's a balanced approach to energy from the offshore oil and gas sector as well. And what I mean by that is that whole boom and bust mentality of, 50 rigs drilling in the Gulf and then no rigs drilling in the Gulf and then 30 rigs and then back to no, it's not like that anymore. What we've seen is less activity, but steady activity. And there's I would classify as a new normal in the industry, where there's, again, a balanced approach to the number of vessels they're hiring, to the number of rigs that are on contract, so that there's just a constant, steady movement of drilling and drilling and production in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's interesting to see that, because even in sometimes I like to think of myself as still being young, but I'm not. I'm getting older.
We are.
Right?
We are.
We're all young, right? But
Let me be clear.
I've seen enough in just my lifetime of the ebbs and flows of the industry. This last, I guess, almost 10 years now has been just a steady, time of business, which is good, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would think that that's a good thing for a variety of different reasons. One, a lot of the meetings I get to sit in and luncheons where I get to hear guest speakers, I hear a lot about the importance of consistency for business, right? Having some idea of what's coming down the road. Business doesn't really like surprises. And so that level of consistency. But honestly, I'm thinking about our own energy production program we have here at Fletcher. And truthfully, we've had some difficulty over the past decade or so because of those ebbs and flows, and parents and students who say, I want something for my child where I know that there's going to be that consistency in employment, in wages, and things like that. And even with the last downturn, where we had trouble was the parents today were the children in the 80s. And so there was this sense of we kind of want to get out of this cycle of the ups and downs, or the booms and the downturns. And so to me, for our community, for our workforce, right, to be able to go out and say there is this consistency now, maybe, and maybe you're not gonna make a zillion dollars, right? But you're also not worried about not having a job at some point if things turn down. So would you? I mean, does that sound right to you?
It does. I think we can't say that we're ecstatic about where
Right.
we are and what those levels are, but they're steady. I think we would like the numbers to be more steady, but a little higher. Right? So if we have
Yeah.
18 or so rigs doing new wells with
Mm-hmm.
another maybe 10 doing workovers, so that's a number of 28 or so rigs doing
Right.
something in the Gulf. Add 10 or 12 to that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think everybody would be happy, right?
Yeah.
More rigs, a few more vessels, more people needed, and those just to keep us at a more robust, steady rate.
I like it.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
But again, policy at the federal level is important as well, right? And until we can kind of solidify our energy policy, which we have not been in the last 4 years, we can maybe move that ball forward.
What does it take? What is it going to take to get to that stable but more robust energy production?
It takes an administration and smart, sound energy policy to make that happen, right? We need a 5-year plan for permitting and for development and for leasing new sites in the Gulf of Mexico. Because look, or the Gulf of America,
Right.
but I mean, from start to finish, when a company purchases a lease in the Gulf, it's at least 10 years to get to production, right? So,
Long time.
so all of the production that is talked about by the last administration wasn't from their policies that we had the production. It was from policies from the previous administration and maybe the one before that.
Gotcha.
Right. So that's the things that a lot of the messaging gets skewed and misinterpreted and all of those things. But we need good energy policy. And we've been talking for the last 4 years at least about energy addition.
Yeah.
Right. Not transition. We're not losing oil and gas.
Right.
But we need more energy capability. And I think we still believe that. And we want to continue to move forward on an all of the above energy strategy.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. What does that look like? What does it look like for the port? If you have companies coming in and saying we're going to diversify or go into a more of an energy addition track, right? Whether that's, I don't know, wind, solar, LNG. And I think you guys are doing some stuff in LNG. What does that look like for the port in terms of development of that infrastructure? Does that require you all to do something new, or do you have it built in? And what do you see in
It's
that
a
realm?
little of both.
Okay.
I think when you look at offshore wind, it's we think that in the oil and gas industry we have dealt with heavy equipment, and we have, right? We have the 3 largest cranes servicing the daily operations of the offshore oil and gas industry in Port Fourchon. Okay.
Wow.
But the largest crane that we have at 880 tons capability is not large enough to handle the largest of the offshore wind turbine
Really?
components, right? So there are things that can and will need to be done, if and when
Right.
the offshore wind market comes to fruition in the Gulf of Mexico.
Huh. That is really interesting. I didn't realize that they were that big.
They are.
Holy cow. So let's talk a little bit about challenges. We have a few here in South Louisiana. Mainly we would think of hurricanes, but certainly I guess now snowstorms.
Correct.
And the like. I tell people all the time I moved away from Ohio to get out of snowstorms, and I guess I haven't gone quite far south enough. I might have to come down to Port Fourchon.
Right.
Though you had snow, did you have
We
snow?
did.
Really? How
11
much?
inches
11 inches. Holy
in
cow.
the port, yes.
Was that a new challenge?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
Yeah.
It was a new challenge. What's interesting, though, is that since we've had the elevated highway into the port, that brings around a new challenge when it gets cold.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So in the last, I guess, 6 or 7 years, that bridge has iced over 3 times. So now we're having to think about, okay, we have another 9 miles coming online in 2027. So that'll give us 18 miles of elevated highway. And there's, DOTD,
Yeah.
is always working towards trying to help us, but then they can't get to us. They're focused on the interstates and all of those things. So we're having to talk about how are we going to handle it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm going to hook you up with someone in Ohio with a salt truck.
There you go.
You're going to need a salt truck.
And that's the
I
whole
hate to
thing.
say it. Wow.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
So it's new challenges.
New challenges, always something new. So how has the port adapted? You had Ida, obviously significant, but that's not the first hurricane, and I'm sure that there's been some disruptions. But you also have things like supply chain disruptions and other type of economic kinds of shifts. How do you adapt to that? How do you ensure that the port stays stable and doesn't go up and down with those types of things?
Right. You have to keep moving.
Yeah.
And you can't stay stagnant. And you can't just think like things are just going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to continue to evolve. Right. So from a physical standpoint, we've evolved in building things higher and better and stronger and to meet new wind loads and, elevations of storm surges and all of those things. We've had to do that. It's all about resilience. We're trying to be as resilient as possible. Elevated highways coming in, building buildings higher, stronger, better to meet those, impacts that are coming from the natural disasters. And even with economic issues, right? When the oil spill took place, unfortunately, and that tragedy that took place with BP Macondo, well, those things and the impacts after that of, permits not being issued, moratorium on drilling, all those things that impacted our customers, right? Directly, their customers and our customers. COVID, downturns in the industry. We've had to be nimble in how we deal with our customers because when they're impacted because of something that is completely out of their control, right? What are we going to do? We're just going to say, hey, you have to just keep paying your rent. And if you can't, you can't. You need to leave. No.
Right.
Our job is to make sure we have longevity. Our job is to make sure that our customers remain our customers for the long haul. So we've done everything we've needed to do. And my board, that board of commissioners who are elected to answer to the general public in the 10th ward of the parish are doing everything in their power to make sure that we maintain our customers. And if that means, reducing rent for a period of time by a percentage or, allowing for a few months of no rent and then building it in on the back end, just creative ideas on how to keep our customer base.
Yeah. And I think you use such an important word in terms of nimble. One of the things that I hear oftentimes about Fletcher as well is that we're nimble. We try to move. We try to stay at least ahead and try to look towards the future. And I do think that is, in many instances, the hallmark of organizations that do go the long haul, that are around for the long term, is that they recognize that you can't get comfortable. You can't just say, well, things are great right now, so let's just just take a moment and enjoy it. I always refer to it. I always ask everybody, when do I get to sit at my desk and read the Chronicle of Higher Education? Like, I have never done that in 10 years. But it's not getting complacent. Right. And it sounds like you and the board at the port are really have your eye on that future state at all times.
That's correct. That's correct. And the board keeps me honest.
Yeah.
I work for them.
Yep.
And then my staff and the 45 people that work for the Port Commission, most of them are harbor policemen or maintenance guys or gals that are, making sure things are safe, secure, and operational. The rest of us are admin staff that are making sure we're paying our bills and people are paying theirs, right? Yeah. But they keep me honest as well. So it's everybody working together, making sure that we're making decisions and doing things for the betterment of our community. And at the end of the day, if you're doing that, you're probably going to succeed. Yeah. And I have to give, you and Fletcher credit because y'all are always the ones that we see. And I think all of the higher education in our communities locally here are very good about that. You guys in particular here at Fletcher in meeting the immediate demand of the community as it's happening, right? We're not 2 years too late, right? We're what do you need? Okay, let's build a program and let's go get it now. Right. And that's important that you can stay that same kind of nimble mindset as to, look, we have to meet the demand of the community today, not in 2 years from now.
Right. Yeah, no, we have to stay
While
relevant.
thinking about
While
that.
thinking ahead, yeah. That's what keeps me up at night.
Exactly.
So, but you do have a pretty phenomenal board. And I think one of the things that just I'm a little fascinated about is, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, this is a local board. These are locally elected officials. At the same time, they are having a national and international impact. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about Port Fourchon in that context, because I don't think sometimes we really recognize what's in our own backyard.
Right.
And the impact that a shutdown at the port has on our nation's energy production and consumption. So take a few minutes just to tell us why is Port Fourchon so important to the nation?
Yeah, so with all of the services that I talked about earlier that we're providing on a daily basis to the offshore energy industry, we play some role in about 16% of the nation's oil supply.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's
right?
a lot.
And when you talk about Loop or Louisiana Offshore Oil Port and what they're doing, they're connected to 50% of the nation's refining capacity. So all that oil comes from offshore into a booster station in Port Fourchon, stored near our airport in Galliano in some tanks, and then it's brought to the river and then shipped to 50% of the nation's refining capacity. So that, along with, if you think about, currently unelevated LA1 that we have to drive on to get to the port, that's at a +2 elevation. Well, the port at its lowest is at a +4 elevation and goes up to +8. Our new developments that we're building are going to be at a +10, right? So the impact on the port from storms and storm surge, it's less than the impact on that unelevated portion of LA1 currently, right?
Gotcha.
So when we can't access the port, but we otherwise could be operating because that section of road is over top of the water, it has a $46 million daily impact to the energy industry and a $500 million daily impact to the national GDP.
Wow.
Right? It's amazing numbers for, a piece of real estate in South Louisiana and South Lafourche that not everybody really knows about or gets to see. And we take that responsibility of what we're doing there very seriously. Yeah. Right?
I would think so.
We're proud of it.
Yeah.
We're proud of it, but we take it seriously. And we know our number one priority is making sure that port is always operational as best we can. So, when a Hurricane Ida, right, who gives us a direct hit and took a lot of damage, but we were able to get back up and running with at least one facility, loading vessels within 5 days and within 9 days before any of our users could find another place to go. We were back up and running. Wow. Every one of our facilities was able to load vessels within 9 days of the storm.
That's incredible.
That's critical for us to continue to be as resilient as possible for the future.
Yeah, and that really speaks to when you were talking about the new elevated highway, right? That's really critical to get in and out of the port, right, to avoid that low-lying road that gets down there. But again, it goes to I hope the sense of pride people have in this idea that project means that our nation's energy is stable and consistent. And so, again, we sometimes think about projects as being, oh, well, that's just a South Louisiana project, but it's not. No. It's really much, much bigger than that.
This absolutely is. This means a lot to everyone in our country when it comes to gas prices at the pump for their vehicles and all of those things, and energy prices as a whole. So we understand the importance. Our users do, our port does, and I hope our community understands, and we're just trying to make them proud every day.
Yeah. Well, look, I will tell you one of the things that I think you all should be really proud of that I've been so impressed with is I don't think it's necessary. Maybe it's a new venture. I don't know. But it's the work that you're doing around sort of this environmental sustainability and the coastal restoration. You guys have done some pretty amazing things in terms of, I think there's like a new park
Yes.
and just some of the other activities. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in that space, because I don't know that
Sure.
that's also something when people, when they think of ports, are thinking about, wait, a park? Or, I think you're doing some dredging and some backfilling in to help restore our coast. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So every time we dredge a channel, every speck of sand we using beneficially to either build marsh or to build industrial developable properties. Okay. So that's critical as we try to be sustainable and try to be resilient. We know what the coastal Louisiana used to look like 50 years ago and what it looks like today. We're trying to help, be a part of that coastal master plan that we have in the state of Louisiana, trying to rebuild that coast that we've lost over the years. I mean, it's out of necessity that we're doing it, but it's one of those things where, as part of our development for the port, we've built over 1,200 acres of marsh in and around the port area. Recreational and commercial fishing is our history.
Yeah.
That's where we've come from. We still have some marinas in the port. We're known for offshore oil and gas services, and offshore energy, but we still have some marinas in the port that are just for commercial fishing and just for recreational fishing. And that's important that we continue to have that heritage and culture as a part of the entire landscape of the port. But as we move forward, we want to continue to enhance the recreational capabilities in and around the port area as well. So as part of our Slip D development, that's a newest slip that we have in the port, we created what we call our coastal wetlands park because we had enough material. We were mandated to create 65 acres of marsh as part of the mitigation for that slip. Well, we had enough material to create 100 acres of marsh. Wow. So because of that, we're able to create the coastal wetlands park that now has a tidal creek running through it, a kayak launch, a wharf out there. We received a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, which is actually money that comes from royalties from the offshore production, goes to the federal government. Then we getting some back in. We worked with the Lieutenant Governor's office on that, and they helped us get those funds. So we're going to build an elevated platform that identifies the types of habitat you're seeing, like birds, fish, plants in that area.
Cool.
And it's all about the mindset of how industry and the environment can and do work very well together. And so the backdrop of all that marsh and that coastal wetlands park is the industrial park of the port, right? There's some schools of thought that say, well, if you have industry, then it must be against the environment. If you're for the environment, you must be against industry. That couldn't be further from the truth, right? And we're trying to show and be an example of how that all works together.
Yeah, and that's something that we do really well in South Louisiana.
Absolutely.
Is those two things. I'm excited. I do want to mention to folks that the kayak launch is out there. And can you rent kayaks? Like if I don't own one, can I?
So there was something set up out there, and it's been removed since the last storm, and I don't know if they brought it back. So hopefully
Probably
you have your
own.
kayak and bring it out there. And
Gotcha.
and go there.
But
any non-motorized vessel can operate there.
Very cool. So like a paddle board too.
Correct.
Excellent. Right. And I want to mention that to the group because oftentimes too here we like to share information. So for instance, we had a guest on and we were talking about activities with the kids during the summer. This would be a wonderful opportunity for a family to come down, see the natural habitat, see the wildlife, maybe kayak, take a paddleboard, have a nice family day, do a little picnic.
That's correct.
And also get to see the amazing things that are happening in the industry that's driving our economy.
That's correct. That's the whole point of trying to attract people there is to get them to see it, and then you could start to teach them about everything that's going on.
Awesome. What's up and coming? What do you want to share with us that you're like, this is really cool? And I'd also like to know, are you doing anything special for the 65th anniversary?
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Okay.
So we are, we've been working on deepening the port for several years. You have to go through, a federal process with the Corps of Engineers and all of those things, right? So we're going to begin dredging in the middle of this year to 33 feet. We're currently at minus 27. But this last Water Resource Development Act bill got passed through Congress the ability to submit a 50-foot draft report for just Bell Pass in the port, so just the main channel into the port that connects to Bayou Lafourche, for our deep water port facility and what we're trying to accomplish there, which also will help us usher in liquefied natural gas plant that we currently have a lease on and should start the federal regulatory process later. So we're excited about all of those things happening. You know, we want to bring in deep water. We want to be able to have a slip that will handle deep water rig repair and refurbishment, project cargo offloading, fabrication for like jackets construction, that sort of thing, decommissioning as well, and whatever other opportunities come our way. But that will allow us to be a full service port facility for offshore energy, no matter what offshore energy it is, as well as the liquefied natural gas, which puts us in the international game and exporting, energy around the world.
Very cool. Do you have the space?
Right.
It sounds like a big footprint.
Yeah.
Is that all what you can do, or are you looking to build or purchase or
So we
create more
have the property we need under lease, and the LNG, we own that property. The property for the deep water port facility that I talked about, what we call Fourchon Island, is under a 99-year lease. So we have all of that. We have access to the property. So we're moving the plans forward to get that online.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about the rodeo.
All right.
And you all do a tremendous amount. Again, I so appreciate the vision and the balance, right? So you have this industrial port, right? And then you have the creation of this recreational habitat area for the community to enjoy. And then on top of all of that, you give back to scholarships. You raise money annually. And I know we have been so appreciative of your investment in Fletcher. So please accept my thanks for you all. But, you've done scholarships, you do reinvestment into nonprofits and organizations and that community sector. So tell us, I know some of those funds are generated through your rodeo. Let's talk about that. And then tell us about why that give back to the community. Why is it important? And maybe, a little bit about some of the organizations that you guys sponsor.
Sure. So the Fourchon Oilmen's Association, now turning into the Fourchon Energy Association.
Oh,
we don't want to be focused just on oil. We want to be focused on all of the above energy. That organization was created by the business community of the port and the folks that were operating in the port, and wanted to have a nice event that could be a great networking event to bring people in and really showcase how the industry and environment work together. And we're so happy to be, the host area for that. It wasn't started by the Port Commission. We're involved. Yeah. Right? It was started by the business community, so it was really organic from that standpoint. They wanted to create something that could be, like I said, a great networking opportunity, bring people in, have a good time, eat some good food, raise some money, and give back to the community, which is the best part of it all, right? And from the beginning, it's been we've given the Fourchon Oilmen's Association, Fourchon Energy Association has given away about $1.2 million.
It's incredible.
Over since it started back 12 or 15 years ago. So we've had really good time doing that, and giving back to the schools for workforce development programs, giving to churches. In the beginning of our time, giving money back to some of the schools, Promethean boards, the smart boards. We bought a ton of those, and put them in the classrooms all over.
That's OG technology.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we bought a ton of those, and just giving back. A church needed a roof, right? A new roof. We gave them some funding for a roof. And different things like that. We give to, Bless Your Heart nonprofit and others that are providing meals to, hungry people. One year we had bought a bunch of food, and then we had a storm that came through, so we couldn't have the event, right? Gave all the food to Second Harvest Food Bank, so they could do what they needed to do with that. And then outside of the grants that we've given back, the scholarships, giving back to both technical scholarships for people to come to to Fletcher, as well as 4-year degree scholarships to, students that are going in whatever they want to, be it nursing, engineering, whatever, teaching, whatever it may be. We want to be able to provide funds to students to go to school. And hopefully we bring them back in, right? And we want them to stay in our communities and come back. But it's been a very rewarding thing to be a part of. And that's why the Port Commission built that pavilion that's there, right? Yeah. It's not something we had to do, but we saw a need and we wanted to build something permanent instead of having to be housed in tents. Yeah. Right. And there's, 2, 3, I think maybe we've had 4 at one time that had used that tent. So the Port Commission decided to build a pavilion, because that was our way of allowing these rodeos to continue to make their mark on the community, as well as with the, working with the chamber at the Golden Meadow Fourchon Tarpon Rodeo, who also uses that pavilion, also gives money back to the community in the form of scholarships that I'm happy to say I'm the admiral for in 2025. So excited about that and what's coming this summer.
Yeah, I love that pavilion. I love it even more that it's air conditioned.
Yes, exactly.
I visited down there before the pavilion was built.
Right.
So we do appreciate that. Okay, I got to circle back. What's the mosquito crew?
So the mosquito crew is anywhere from 4 to 6 summer workers. They come in, the college students that we hire in the summers to come in. That's our way of, it's not a scholarship to those kids, but they come work and they cut the grass, they pick up trash, they paint, they do basic maintenance work in the port and at the airport for us. And I was part of that crew back in the summers when I was in undergrad, and I really enjoyed that, and we enjoy continuing to hire students to come in and give them an opportunity to work and make some money and see what the port does.
Nice. Okay, question 2. Right. There were muskrats? Because I'm just going to tell you, the only thing I know about muskrats is the, what was it, the Tony and Dawn? Do you remember the song? Muskrat, muskrat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Muskrat Love, I think, is the actual title of the song. Right. So were you having some muskrat love down there at the
port? No, really, mostly just mosquito bites.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What haven't I asked you about Port Fourchon that you think is important for people to know?
What haven't you asked me? I think just from the mindset of, we're never complacent. Yeah. We're always looking for what else can we do to enhance the port's capabilities, create jobs, and invite investment in our community. And that's what we're here to do every day. Ultimately, my job is to be an economic developer. Yeah. Right? We're trying to bring in new investment, trying to create jobs so that we can sustain ourselves for the future. The other thing that I think, when we talk about recreation that I didn't mention earlier was that as part of a historical group, a family that owned property in the port, we purchased their land last year in 2024. Might have been 2023 now that I say that. So it was 2023. We purchased some land from the Caillouette family out of Thibodaux. So we purchased all their land in the port. But as part of that, they saved about 165 acres and donated to the state for a state park. So we're very excited to see the potential of this, state park in Port Fourchon to enhance the capability for recreation.
That's awesome. Yep. And if somebody, I wanted to circle back, if somebody wanted to get involved with the Energy Association, right? Mm-hmm. Believes in the work that you all are doing in scholarships and grants. Is there a way that they can participate if they're a member of the community and say, I'd be interested in either maybe being involved with the rodeo? How can they reach out?
The Fourchon Oilmen's or Fourchon Energy Association, it's mostly folks that are involved in the energy industry. So, Gotcha. So if you're a service company that's involved in the energy industry or something along those lines, yes, you can be a part, you can sponsor, you can get a team and be a part of that. When it comes to the other rodeo, with the chamber and the Golden Meadow Fourchon Tarpon Rodeo, that's a general public event that anyone can participate in, and we're happy to have you for sure on 4th of July weekend.
Awesome. Well, let's have a little more fun.
All right.
Okay. So, largest fish you've ever caught?
Largest fish I've ever caught.
And is it mounted somewhere?
It is not mounted.
Okay. Did you eat it?
But I did not eat it.
Oh.
I would say the largest, let's just go with the redfish that I caught.
Okay.
The largest redfish. Right? And I couldn't keep it, right? Because it was too big. The rules and regulations. But that was fun.
I think that's a fish tail.
It is a fish tail.
I'm only kidding.
It is a fish tail. But it was about 32-inch, bull red.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
How long did it take you to bring it in?
So I brought it in on a trout line. So it was a 6-pound test line, which was difficult. So I went around the boat several times. So it took me about 30 minutes to get it in the boat.
All right.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Had a good time.
Very cool. I did want to mention one other thing. So I want to circle back to that because I'll tell you, when I came down to Port Fourchon for the first time, and every time I take that road, I stop by your offices because you have a beautiful sculpture there. It's so touching and it's so beautifully made, and I think a lot of people miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just personally want to take a moment to point that out, to say, if you get down to Port Fourchon, stop, take that moment, spend some time there, spend a moment there. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that and how it came to be?
Sure. It's called the Lady of the Gulf statue, and it was brought in by the idea of a wonderful woman who had a son that she lost offshore in a diving accident, and she wanted to create something that honored her son and all the other people that lost their lives offshore, and most of them that were never found, right? Because a lot of times when these incidents happen offshore, you can't recover.
Yeah.
So that is a hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So just in order to try to deal with that closure, she wanted to create this statue, and it's a very touching scene every day, and periodically we'll just we'll come there and there's a ribbon tied to something, or a new wreath, or something identifying that someone visited, and I don't think we ever when she came to us and said, look, I'm looking for a place to put this. We were like, yeah, you can put it right here. We'll give you this spot and just put it there. And I don't think we thought that it was going to be visited as much as it is, or thought so much about. But we're really happy to do that. And when the dedication came around several years ago, and some of the families of the Macondo incident, and they came, and those names are on there, and I think I heard some of them talking, and they were interviewed and talking about how this was their closure, right?
Yeah.
And that, the other thing was like the normal human reaction, right? Mm-hmm. So when something like that happens and you're like, well, you get a negative connotation of, because your family member was lost, it was kind of, the port was part of that loss, right?
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
So that they had a negative connotation of that.
Right.
And once this statue was put in place and they had something they could hold on to, and it represented their loved one's life, it completely changed their perspective. So I think when I heard that statement, I was like, that's why we did it.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we wanted to be a part of that.
I just know the first time I saw it, I was so moved.
Yeah.
And so I stop every single time I come down by you all to see it. So thank you for giving it a home and for providing that for the families.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Okay. Someone told me that you have a long history of being in, how did they put it? Right place, wrong time.
Yeah, I guess so.
What was that about?
So I guess the point is that my first day at the port was September 12th of 2005. That was my first day at the port.
Wow.
It was 2 weeks after Hurricane Katrina. And my job was, when I first started for the port, I was not the port director, right? I was a grant writer in business development. Technically my title was Economic Development and Grants Administrator. And the grants administrator part was you got to deal with FEMA.
Okay.
Right? So my first job was dealing with 30 project worksheets for the port. And, so that was just a mind-blowing thing. But I learned so much.
Yeah.
And then in February 2009, the board named me the next port director. So I worked with my predecessor until January of 2010 when I took over. And then 4 months later was the Macondo incident.
Yeah.
And, what I thought I would be doing prior to April 20th in my career completely changed at the snap of fingers, and that just awful situation. Yeah. And just what we had to do and deal with and all of those things, from media to the Coast Guard and all of those things that happened, and just reacting to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was just a tragedy that we had to deal with, and that's the whole point. Is every time I change jobs, there's always something that happens.
Yeah.
So they want me to not change jobs again. So that's the whole thought process.
All right. We always end our podcast with a piece of advice that you would like to give to our listening and watching audience. So can be maybe something that was shared with you that means a lot, or just something you've stumbled across as you've lived out your journey. So piece of advice for all of us.
If the things you're doing on a daily basis, you're doing it with your heart and your mind together, you probably can't go wrong.
Oh, that's amazing. That is great advice. That alignment of the heart and the mind. I love it. Well, you have reached the end. You survived.
All right.
I hope you had a good time.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for coming by and talking to us about all things Port Fourchon, as well as your very interesting life, the life and times of Chett Chiasson. So, thank you all for being here with us again today. This is Bridging the Bayou, a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.